is Tracking the Tropics.
Breaking news here on Tracking the Tropics as we monitor Hurricane Dorian in the Atlantic. We have the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. It has strengthened to a high-end Category 3 hurricane, not yet Category 4 status, but knocking on the door of Category 4 status. We're breaking it down here live with our meteorologist here, again on Tracking the Tropics. Hey there, everybody. WFLA Now's JB Buno here, digital anchor with you live on stream with two meteorologists, Matt DiNardo from WRIC in Richmond, Virginia, who's actually here in Tampa helping us out with Hurricane Dorian coverage. And then in the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, it is Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren joining us from Shreveport, Louisiana. Thanks, Todd, for being with us. But I want to start here with you, Matt, and talking a little bit about this 8 o'clock advisory, again, that just came in from the National Hurricane Center. What are we looking at here?
I think this is a big update here. As we're looking at the still picture of the satellite, you can see how well-defined the eye is on this one. And the two things that happened. One, we are flying hurricane hunters consistently into this hurricane now on 3-hour missions, and we noted a pressure drop of nearly 20 millibars in the past 3 hours. You're saying, is that a lot? Yeah, that's a lot, and that's why the winds went from 115 to 125. That's 5 miles per hour, less than Category 4 storm strength. It has picked up forward speed by 1 mile an hour. That's probably really insignificant because it's about to enter an area that's really kind of light winds for steering currents, and therefore we expect this is going to slow down. Now, there's no official change with this update in terms of the track. However, that comes in at 11. That's something we're going to watch because we're still looking at this becoming a Category 4. We're right under that right now. And if you look at this track, the National Hurricane Center did not have this as a Category 4 until 2 a.m. Sunday morning. That may be upped, and that, of course, talks about the fact that it's moving over Bathwater and the fact that the winds are very light, so this is going under some pretty rapid strengthening. We may be looking at this Cat 4 possibly by 11 p.m. tonight or maybe 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll see how that all plays out, though. Let's talk a little bit with Todd here, and Todd, this is a big update. It's a pretty significant change.
Yeah, I was looking at the update. I was kind of surprised to see how much it went up as far as the sustained winds. 115 to 125. You mentioned the drop in the pressure of 30 millibars. That's rather significant in such a short period of time.
Have you been also watching the models too, Todd, and seeing the overall pattern is that slight check to the right, up along the coast versus coming inland?
That's true. That's a good trend that we've seen here today. But the key to this is not to get too optimistic, as obviously we hope that this trend will continue, as it's quite possible that we could see a turn. The key is that if it continues to slow down, as the Hurricane Center mentioned in the 5 o'clock advisory, that the models were consistent in the amount of time that it would take before that turn would begin. But since it's slowing down, that turn would actually occur perhaps before it actually made it to the Florida Peninsula. So that's going to be one thing that we'll be watching very closely, I think, during the course of the next couple of days is the speed of the hurricane. Obviously, if it doesn't slow down as much as anticipated, it might make it a little bit further west before it does make that turn.
That's going to be something to really watch. And the speed is the key because the slower the speed is, as I'm showing this graphic here, it's really sitting over this very warm water where we're measuring 85, 86, almost 87 degrees. And tropical systems just love that warm water. And then again, up top in the sky, there's no real steering currents to rip this apart, to shear it. So it's just going to grow and become stronger and stronger. And then you see, all the deep red water it's crossing there from really the 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon mark all the way until it makes landfall close to the coast of Florida. Again, this track is still from the 5 o'clock update, so that's something that we continue to watch with this. This is certainly a pretty amazing storm. Have we gone from really almost no formed eye this morning to one that is so well defined right now on either the visible earlier or now the infrared satellite.
That's true. And yesterday, we had that upper level low, which was a little bit closer to it. It's starting to move away. So the shear that it was causing yesterday is decreased, allowing Dorian to really kind of explode in terms of the intensity here during the course of the next 24 hours. And as you mentioned, there's really nothing else in the way to keep it from strengthening. I know you've been asked earlier if this could become a Cat 5 storm. That's something that's very well within the realm of possibility, especially given the strength that we've seen it already reach here in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and really right now it's a battleground between the two high pressures, the one sitting to our west out in Texas and, of course, the larger Bermuda high. And if that gives way, the Bermuda high just a bit, that's what's allowing the potential turn that some of the models are indicating. But like you said earlier, we just don't want to get all our hopes up because we've seen things change like that and go right back to a different scenario.
Exactly. And just go back to, I'm in Shreveport. We were dealing with Barry a few months ago. It looked at one point as if Barry would go up, the Mississippi, and we were thinking, oh, well, it's not really going to affect us. Well, eventually, within the last couple of days, that track had eventually moved within 5 miles of Shreveport. So again, these things, as far as the eventual track of the storm, can change dramatically. And of course, when we're talking about, the peninsula of Florida, 150 miles can make a huge difference on the impact that a storm of this magnitude could bring to different parts of Florida. You can see the landfall there Tuesday afternoon, just north of Port St. Lucie, and then a little bit of an acceleration, perhaps, if it were to move up the east coast of Florida during the 24 hours after that, from Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday afternoon. And another thing for viewers further up to the north and east, again, the latest computer models, not the best of tracks really right along the coast, especially the GFS. Notice taking it right up the coast of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. Obviously, that would cause some big time problems, not only for Florida, but for residents along the coast of the Carolinas as well as Georgia.
And we've seen this before. If you think back to Matthew a couple of years ago, it did that track along the coast of Florida and then really decimated coastal South Carolina with tremendous rainfall and beach erosion. And then, of course, it was flooding beyond belief. I want to step back. You mentioned Barry, which you dealt with, I believe it was back in July. And Barry was a kind of slow-moving storm in the beginning, and it dropped a lot of rain in your area as well. That's something that we're looking at with this. Slow-moving storms, lots of rain.
Lots of rain, especially. The thing with Barry here, we a lot of dry air with that one. It was a relatively weak storm, but this one, again, a lot of rain within it, and it's going to be, as you mentioned, a very slow mover. To the east of us, we did have those rainfall totals of the 10 to 20 inches over parts of southeast Louisiana. And we're looking at, generally speaking here, you might anticipate right now the outlook is, I believe, 6 to 12 inches, maybe an isolated 18-inch total, which with obviously the heaviest amounts closer to the coast, near and to the right of where Dorian would eventually go. So the farther east we could get this path to go, obviously the better off it would be in terms of the water aspect of this, in terms of the rainfall. But the one big concern with Dorian will be the slow movement, because as we know, these slow moving things, aka Harvey, a few years ago, they can dump a lot of water in just a couple of days' time.
Yeah, and we have that rainfall graphic up there, and you can really see if you are, let's say, again, using the track, and this is the GFS rainfall along and east of I-95, it's 6 to 12 and locally higher amounts. Whereas you go west of 95, you're in that 1 to almost 3. Again, this is based on one model, but we're just using an example because of the slow-moving nature of the storm and the amount of moisture in the storm. JB, did you want to jump in for a second there?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to ask if we could put I'm reading through some of the comments here, if we could put the cone back up one more time, because one of the things that people are asking about, in addition to, of course, geographically where the storm is going to be, is, of course, timing. We have, Labor Day is going to be on Monday, and then we have school closures here across the state of Florida for Tuesday. But has there been an update in the schedule for potential landfall and potential impacts of this storm going into next week? What are we looking at here?
So not with this update there. We're still looking at that same timing frame from the 5 o'clock update. That doesn't change in what we call the off hours. Your 8 p.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 2 a.m. Those are reserved for the major updates, 5 a.m., 5 p.m., 11, and 11. So those are the ones that we're going to be watching for. That'll be the next one coming up a little bit later on. But so the potential landfall is still marked at 2 p.m. Tuesday, at 140 miles per hour, a Category 4. But again, just notice the fact that in the top bar there, max winds 125, very close to Cat 4 right now. Todd?
That's right, Cat 4, and the hurricane force winds extend about 30 miles out from the center, but the tropical storm force winds, more than 100, I believe 115 miles out from the center. So we'll start to feel the effects, obviously, during the morning hours Tuesday as it begins to move in. And you can see from Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday afternoon, it really doesn't make a whole lot of progress, basically moving up the east coast of Florida. So you're looking at a good solid 24 hours there from Tuesday through Wednesday, at least based on this track. At least the eastern half of Florida getting some very, very heavy rain. Now, obviously, you have that cone of uncertainty there. If we do see it track a little bit further to the west, we showed you the rainfall graphic. You shift all that, 50 to 100 miles westward, and you can see a much greater impacts in terms of the rainfall, basically from Tuesday through Wednesday.
All right, guys, so I want to hop in here because we're going to be beginning the interactive Q&A portion of our stream. Everybody at home, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you might have seen the comment just pop up there in your screen. Again, I'm being joined by WRIC morning meteorologist Matt DiNardo from Richmond, Virginia, and then, of course, Todd Warren joining us, chief meteorologist in Shreveport, Louisiana, from KTAL. Guys, thanks, of course, for lending your expertise. The live Q&A portion, you at home in the Facebook Live comment section can use either hashtag #HeyMatt or hashtag #HeyTodd to answer or ask questions that we'll have answered by our meteorologists here live on stream. So we're going to be looking for the initial questions coming in here, guys, but we're going to let those kind of questions come in. I see Diana is saying... Diana wants to know, hey, Todd, where do we think it's going to make landfall? You were talking about this a couple minutes ago, but why don't you chime in there for our Facebook Live viewer tuning in?
Well, it looks like it's going to be obviously across the central coast of Florida there Tuesday afternoon. Is it you can see about halfway between Miami and Cape Canaveral there Tuesday afternoon at around 2 o'clock. That's the way it looks right now. And obviously this could change. One thing to make note of, too, is that there is a great deal of uncertainty with the steering currents kind of lightening up just a bit. We likely will see some change as to where this eventually does make landfall. Also, we'll see some change more than likely as to when that landfall occurs, because obviously if it moves further to the west, doesn't make that turn before it makes landfall, we might see that landfall occur a bit sooner. But right now, it looks like a bit north of halfway between Cape Canaveral and Miami there along the east coast of Florida.
Again, use the hashtags #HeyMatt or #HeyTodd to ask questions to the two meteorologists that you have here on your screen, everybody. This next one coming in from WFLA Top Facebook fan Ashley Lentz asking, #HeyMatt, will it hit Tampa Bay? I am from Clearwater, Florida. We've been talking so long here, Matt, about whether or not we can pinpoint, of course, where this storm is going to be hitting. But as the storm gets closer, we could talk a little bit more. We're not there yet, though, right?
Well, we're not there yet, but we can say that, if this... what we're looking at here, which is the National Hurricane Center track, if this were to come to fruition, the Tampa area would see, they were on that low end of that rainfall. They were in that 1 to 3 inch rainfall. And they were certainly, in that edge, or we're certainly in that edge of tropical storm force winds, probably low end because we're so far west. But we're still several days out. Again, we're not looking today's, Friday evening here at 8:25 or whatever the time may be. And we're not looking at a landfall until Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And so we're still 3 to 4 days away before we can really worry about what are the specifics for Tampa Bay, Clearwater, St. Peter's, or the Highlands, I was asked. Those types of things can't be worked out yet until we know that real good track. And that's going to be about 48 hours out. And even then, there's going to be some variances we're going to watch. So what we're showing you are the ideas, are the early projections of what's going to happen. But I think Todd mentioned it there, that big cone, especially when you get from Monday onward, it really fans out. That's because there's so much uncertainty in the back end of that track, Todd.
That's true. And if you look at the spaghetti models, you can kind of see that divergence. You mentioned the 48 hours out. Notice at the beginning of that track of the spaghettis there, that how close they are together. Once we get to, say, into Sunday, perhaps Sunday night, Monday, we should see all the divergence in those spaghetti models, the model projections kind of come together so that we will be able to pinpoint more in terms of where it's going to be going and the impacts of that path will bring to various parts of the state of Florida.
We got the next couple of questions coming in for #HeyTodd. This one coming in, oh my goodness, it just got scrolled up, but I believe it was from Nicole asking, hey Todd, what is the worst part of this storm? Which side is it to be on?
Well, obviously, with the hurricane, the right side of the storm, as it's moving, the right side is the worst because the motion of the storm actually contributes to the winds. As you also have quite a bit more in terms of rain on the right side of the storm as well. So that's why we say the farther east this could go, the better. For the Tampa area, the worst case scenario would be that it moves across Florida and then makes the turn up the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico. So again, the right side of where you can see the path there on your screen, the right side of that red line is where, and near and close to the center is where the hurricane conditions, the wind and the rain are usually the worst.
Marielle is asking here in the comments, hashtag, hey, Matt, what about Georgia? I live near Savannah and in Statesboro. What can we tell Marielle there in the comments section?
So that's a really good question, because if this, whether we look at the National Hurricane Center forecast, which we're looking at now, or even some of the spaghetti charts, and Todd alluded to this, some of those are sliding not just along the coast of Florida, but then really riding up the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. And in a track like that, you'd be looking at storm surge into the intercoastal waterways of northern Florida, and then certainly into Georgia and South Carolina. Plus, you'd be looking at that heavy rain kind of following the immediate coastline, and that's where you'd have your strongest winds, because if this were to stay offshore, yes, there would be some lowering of the winds due to the interaction of the land, but we'd still be looking at potentially a formidable hurricane as it moves up the coast until it moves either inland and gets all shut off from the water and it's ripped apart by the land, or it moves out to sea and is not a factor. So hugging the coast is really dangerous, because we look at a lot of problems. Again, coastal storm surge, coastal flooding, and of course flooding from the rainfall on a track like that. So that's something to watch.
All right, so we have another question here coming in. It's for Matt one more time. Hashtag, hey, Matt, from WFLA Top Facebook fan Deb, saying, hey, Matt, what will Richmond get? Of course, Matt is from Richmond, Virginia, a little bit far away from Hurricane Dorian at the moment, but please, no, she says, great job you're doing, exclamation point from Deb.
Truly appreciate that. It's very awesome. So, one of the good things about this is, we're going to be on the far northern end of the storm even later in the week, being up toward the mid-Atlantic. So the Richmond area, we're talking about something that's going to be probably maybe a Friday or Saturday factor, if anything at all, because some of the models, again, even when you look at the spaghettis or the newer runs that are coming on in, maybe kind of hugging it along the coast, and then at coastal North Carolina starting to push it out to sea. But again, we have a long ways to watch that before it gets to the mid-Atlantic.
All right, well, the next question's coming in for Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren there in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm going to give you a 2-for-1 here, Todd. Can you do two questions for us? You ready?
Shoot, yes.
All right. Jenna is asking, hashtag, hey, Todd, how's the crawfish going to be affected over there in Louisiana from these storms? That's an important question for Jenna. She wants that answered. And then Lauren is asking more of a meteorology question here. Hashtag, hey, Todd, what kind of winds will we expect if this does, in fact, hit Orlando? That question coming in from Lauren. The floor is yours, Todd.
Well, as far as the crawfish, they'll be just fine. Since Dorian is going to stay away, they're kind of used to these hurricanes anyway here in Louisiana. But as far as the answer to the question, as far as winds in Orlando, it really depends on the final track. At least you're looking at tropical storm force winds. You can plan on that. If we do see the track eventually turn to the north a bit later, and Dorian passes near or maybe a little bit to the west of Orlando, as opposed to what's being forecast by the Hurricane Center now, then obviously hurricane force winds are in play. But given that forecast track, you could probably expect some good tropical storm force winds there in the Orlando area. And if it does shift further to the east, then obviously the winds, again, keep in mind the tropical storm force winds extend out, more than 100 miles out from the center. So at a pretty good shot, you're going to be seeing some tropical storm force winds at the very least there in Orlando, which could be higher if the storm does track to the west of Orlando here early next week.
Again, if you're just joining us here, the interactive Q&A is live with Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren from Shreveport, Louisiana. He's calling in from Louisiana. And then we have, of course, our hero really today, who's been with us on stream several times here on Tracking the Tropics. That is meteorologist Matt DiNardo joining us from Richmond, Virginia. He's going to be with us here in the Tampa Bay area over the next several days, joining Tracking the Tropics to lend his expertise about Hurricane Dorian. We have another question here, hashtag, hey, Todd, coming from Chris Curtis. We're going to go back to you here, Todd. He says, can we expect any tornadoes? He's asking about tornadoes. What do you think?
Definitely so. You get some of those outer bands come in, and tornadoes are a concern, especially with a hurricane of this size. So again, tornadoes will definitely be a concern as the storm approaches, especially on the right side. If you cut the storm in half based on where it's the direction that it's moving, it's on that right side is where that chance for the tornado activity would be highest on some of the outer bands as the storm makes its way in. So that's definitely going to be a concern, and also will be a concern, for folks further to the north and east as well as it's moving more towards the west.
Here we have this next one coming in for hashtag Hey Matt. It comes from WFLA Top Facebook fan Bonnie. She wants to know, hey, Matt, how bad will it get in Bartow? Again, we can't really pinpoint specific cities yet, but Bonnie wants to know, she says she lives, and a few commenters, Matt, have said that they live in a mobile home park. What kind of complications does that potentially present if you're in a mobile home versus your standard residential home or an apartment building?
So because of Hurricane Andrew back in the early 1990s, building codes were dramatically changed here in Florida from the standard home through mobile homes as well. They are made much better now to withstand Category 1 and Category 2 storms. So mobile homes, you're going to be fine. Unless this were to be a direct hit for you at Category 3 or 4, I wouldn't worry so much about that. When you get to, Category 4, Category 5, as we saw with Michael last year, it's widespread devastation, whether it's a mobile home or a standard house, brick foundation, or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's a catastrophic storm. So again, when we're talking about people in Bartow, or we're talking about, people in the Highlands or Polk County, keep in mind that right now, if this were to stay along the coast, you would have tropical storm force winds, which are up to 74 miles per hour. You would be fine with that. So just keep that in mind.
Hashtag Hey Todd coming in from WFLA Top Facebook fan Alan and Kaylee. They want to know, what is the percentage chance, Todd, that this does not hit land at all?
Ooh.
Probably low, I would imagine, right?
Does not hit land at all? Well, first, the rule in weather, never say never. It's very much possible. But I would say I really can't put a number. We're 4 days out. It's definitely a possibility, especially given the trend that we've seen in the models here with that eastward shift today. If it were to totally miss the east coast of Florida and the coast of the Carolinas, everyone would be happy, obviously. But that's something that we can't, let our guard down just yet. But as far as the chance, I would say less than 50% at this point. That's as far as I could go. Matt, do you think? Well,
I think we got to hold the line on that one. 50%. I got what I thought was the tough one earlier, which was what's my percentage chance of being a Cat 5, and I said 65%. And right now, when it went from 115 to 125, I'm looking a little bit better off on that 65. But I thought I was on the hot seat then. That was a real hot seat one.
That was a bold call. 65%. Wow.
Well, yeah. I mean, what it's going over, and I just showed this graphic that really warm water and the lack of steering currents is just, like the two ingredients that you need to bake this cake to get it to go. So that's what I'm looking at there.
That's true. And, the Bahamas is going to be interesting, too. See how much land we can get the center to go over. That may, kind of reduce your 65% chance there just a little bit. But
to 62.
But as you said, the waters are so warm and the winds aloft are so light. Yeah, there's nothing really to impede this thing from getting, to Cat 5 status the way it looks right now.
We got this next question coming in from Facebook fan Faith. She says, hashtag Hey Matt, how should people on the west coast of Florida prepare? Matt, what do you say?
A lot of questions about that. West coast of Florida. Somebody asked about Manatee County as well. And again, I think, if we're looking at this track right now, let's bring it back up here for you, where it's going to hug the east coast of Florida. Areas along and east of I-95 would be worse off than the west coast. So west coast Florida, the Bay region itself, Manatee County, you may just be looking at, a couple of inches of rain. Again, if I'm buying this particular track as it is, and maybe some tropical storm force winds up to 50 and 60 miles per hour. If it goes farther east, that's less winds, that's less rain. If it tracks back inland in the next successive days, that's more rain and higher winds. So to pinpoint specifically, you can't do that yet. We've really got to watch this track carefully.
All right, we have another question coming in here from Kyle Richard, this is more of just an informational-based question, you guys. I'll bring you both up here on screen because it doesn't have a particular hashtag. But can it be more than a Cat 5? Can a storm be above a Cat 5?
Todd, take it.
No, that's all you really. Cat 5 is about as bad as you want. No, the answer to the question is no. It can't be worse than a Cat 5. Cat 5 is bad enough.
Let's see here. We had a question earlier, and I apologize for forgetting the commenter's name. But they wanted to know, we're so focused on Hurricane Dorian. Is there anything else out there we need to be worried about right now? Is there anything behind Dorian currently, maybe in the long-term future, as far as tracking the tropics goes?
Yeah, unfortunately there is. There's a healthy wave that just came off the coast of Africa earlier today, and Ian and I were looking at it, and the 5-day forecast by the National Hurricane Center has increased it to a 40% chance of development. Now, what does that mean, Todd? It doesn't mean we're looking at another Dorian, but it means that we have to watch it carefully.
Definitely so. I mean, that far out in the Atlantic, there's a possibility, obviously, that it could recur before making it this part of the West. But it is a rather hardy wave coming off of Africa. And as you mentioned, does bear watching. Obviously, it's a long ways away from being this far to the east. But again, as we often say this time of year, peak of hurricane season upon us. You got to watch everything that comes off of Africa because eventually it could develop and become a Dorian. But right now, again, just watching basically what we have to keep an eye on with that system coming off of Africa right now.
All right, everybody. I think that pretty much wraps it up for us here on Tracking the Tropics. Again, so lucky to have been joined here by Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren there in Shreveport, Louisiana. He's joining us from KTAL. He's over there in Louisiana, keeping an eye on Hurricane Dorian for all of his Louisiana viewers. And then right here with us at Tampa Bay at WFLA, it's WRIC's meteorologist Matt DiNardo, who is going to be with us the next few days. If you might have missed it, he's going to be joining us here on Tracking the Tropics Live as we continue to be featured or joined by featured meteorologists from around the southeastern United States, really around the entire country. I'm being told that we're now going to be featuring meteorologists maybe as far out as Hawaii. Guys, so we might even have a Honolulu meteorologist joining us in the days to come to provide their perspective. Of course, Hawaii knows a thing or two about tropical weather out there, so it's going to be interesting to hear their perspective. But this pretty much does it for this edition of Tracking the Tropics. We're going to be back here at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central, with that next update that comes down. Guys, real quick, we'll end out on this. What are we expecting, perhaps, from this 11 o'clock update? We are now at high-end Category 3 status. I think, Matt, you alluded to it earlier. We could be approaching Category 4 status, which would be, according to the models. We've been seeing this now for the last couple of days.
I think we're going to see this upgrade to Cat 4 just based on looking at the satellite picture what's up. That is just so well-defined. It's a tightly compact storm with a well-defined eye. Todd?
I agree. If it doesn't happen at 11, it'll happen at 2 or 5. So it's just a matter of time before we see that upgrade. The big question that we'll eventually have to answer is, will it make it to 5?
All right, everybody. We're 11 o'clock. Join us here, streaming live on Tracking the Tropics. I think that we're going to have a little bit from WFLA Chief Meteorologist Steve Jervey in that edition. So, again, the 11 o'clock advisory, when it comes down from the National Hurricane Center, we will be here with you live. We know it's past a few bedtimes out there, but, hey, hurricanes don't sleep. And, guys, neither do we this time of year, right? When it comes to hurricane season, we're in for the long haul here as we track Hurricane Dorian. So again, one more time, a big thanks to Chief Meteorologist Todd Warren and Meteorologist Matt DiNardo here for joining us on Tracking the Tropics. And we'll be back soon in about a couple of hours from now. What is that? About 2.5 hours for the 11 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you soon.